Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Eggs, the podcast. Today's special guest is Jason Friedman, founder and CEO at CX Formula. Jason, how are you, man?
I'm great, Ryan. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks so much for joining us, making the time. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm excited. Very cool.
Why don't we kick things off with just a brief history of your work history? I know you did some lighting in the past. That kind of puts me and you on the same wavelength there.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. The backstage pass days. Yeah. So, my story started in the world of theater, right? So as a kid, I was kind of the behind the scenes, built some sets, did lighting, sound. I was the AV nerd in school. And all through my life, I was involved with shows. One of my dreams ended up was I wanted to go out on the road with Rush. They were like my favorite band growing up. And I had been to it was my first concert that I went to.
Nice.
And
talking about a great first one.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I just remember it was doing the lighting for Rush. I just loved it. And so it was one of the goals I set for myself. And I went to go right out of college. I went to go work for the company that had been providing all their lighting gear and the team and whatever. And I went out with Fleetwood Mac. I went out with Peter Gabriel, and I went out with Rush and kind of hit that goal. And then from there, I went on to do more legit theater. So I did like Fiddler on the Roof, Jesus Christ Superstar, Man of La Mancha. So I traveled in all these different cities, all these different countries, doing the same show night after night to a different audience. And there was this crazy thing that I experienced, right? It's like every single show, whether it's a rock and roll show or a theater show with a different audience, different city, different everything, people had the same reaction in the same spots. So they laughed at the same spot. They cried at the same spot. They clapped at the same spot. They jumped to their feet at the same spot. They started singing along at the same spot, like no matter what. And it was like, holy moly, this is amazing. Like you just got to have this realization that there's a pattern to this, right? And so having been on the production side, I was an assistant lighting designer and a programmer. So I got involved in the pre-production conversations, not just the shows. And as I started like seeing the pattern, I'm like, wait, we actually decided that that's what we wanted to have happen. And then we made it happen through the scripting, through the setting, through the queuing, through all the things that we did, the costumes, the interactions, whatever. And it was actually all intentional. And I was like, wow, like, I wonder if you could do this in business. Like, so, because I had always wanted to, I was an entrepreneur, as a kid. I did have my own bunch of, lemonade stand businesses and what have you. And I was like, that would be really wild. And so my business partner, best friend, Drew, and I, we've been friends since we're 5 years old, been doing this for way, way too long. And we said, let's try this. And we started doing it and it worked. Like we could actually have our customers get the results we wanted by design. It wasn't an accident. It was with intention. And so we started doing this with big brands. Like we stumbled into it and brands like Foot Locker and Armani and Bank of America and Disney and Universal Studios and then universities like Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Duke. And we were able to help them, whether it was raising money with donors by having the donors learn about the things they're doing and get really engaged and really excited and take out their checks and write $1 million checks. Or it was retailers that were trying to, sell advanced financial things, like get people to open up a home equity loan because they were afraid, they didn't know what it was, and getting them educated and having them take those steps. We used the same things and the principles that we learned in theater to do it in business, and it created this awesome, awesome world. And so, like, I'm not in theater anymore, but I'm still in theater, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I love that?
Can I ask a technical question? Back in the day, what time frame was this?
Like the rock and roll days were like 93, 92, 3, 4-ish.
Okay. So what controller were you using for programming?
Well, a bunch, right? So the company that I worked for when I was doing the rock and roll was C Factor, and they had their own called, oh my gosh, the light coordinator. The C Factor light coordinator was the name of their in-house console, and then it was the whole hog and the hog 2, and then we also had the Avolites console for all the static stuff.
There's a picture of the Hog 500 I used to use.
Yeah, exactly, baby. You know it.
This was our roof that we set up for the Fiesta Bowl.
Yep.
And this is Ryan at that show.
Yeah, as a 19-year-old, so
That's
21-year-old
awesome.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
no,
it.
it's funny. It's interesting that the insight that you came across, which is this idea that there's sort of this common thread between humans. There's,
Mm,
we react in certain ways to certain things. There's stimuli you can provide that will invoke a certain type of reaction. Is actually
totally.
the insight we've had from doing this podcast, over 350 some interviews and stuff like that. Our version of this is that
Sure.
basically everybody has got some degree of creative juice in them, for lack of a better term, right? And we use
Sure.
it in different ways. Some people start businesses, other people invent things, whatever it is.
Yep.
But whatever that is, that sort of makes us all, or this inherent creativity in everybody is what ties everyone together. And so,
Yeah.
as we've done our interviews and things like that over the years, I mean, even though we talk to people from a myriad different sources, they, basically the truths they share are universal. So I think it's
Yeah.
really interesting that you
I
came
love
to
that.
it through that other angle. And, as Mike was sort of indicating, he and I spent a lot of time in the music industry too. Of course, in that era, I was working with much smaller bands than Rush and Fleetwood Mac. But
I
but
did too.
still,
I did too. I just mentioned the big
Yeah.
ones.
but
The
nonetheless, those were the fun times, right? And so I can totally relate to what you're talking about. And I
Love
think
that.
more than anything, the thing that really stands out about what you're saying is there's this quote that I think we stole from your website or something, but it's this concept of stopping random acts of marketing. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important, conceptually, because so many people do just kind of market for market's sake.
Hmm.
And it seems like what you're talking about is also something we've really landed on in the show, which is intentionality. And,
Yes.
not just doing something because, hey, everybody's on social media, so we should be on social media too. Rather, it's, we're choosing Twitter or Instagram because that's the right channel for our people. And we want to invoke this kind of reaction. And, it is that thoughtful response. So I think
Yeah.
that,
100%.
what you're saying anyway is ringing very true to me.
I love
Can,
that. Yeah. I love the alignment, and what I found is it is that intentionality is the core of everything. And the thing that's so crazy, like, again, I learned it, this Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, just over the years, not knowing what I was learning. And then one day I could like win the match, right? That's just kind of how it came about. But what's so interesting is you're in theater, you're forced to focus on the audience.
yeah.
Everything is about the audience. It's like, what are the sight lines? What are the angles? What are they seeing? What happens when we want to do a scene change? How will we make sure that they don't lose their attention and they start talking and go on their cell phone or whatever? So everything is focused on them. In business, we don't always have that intensity and focus on our customers. And we lose sight of that. And a lot of times we get so myopic and look at it through our lens as the company, we forget to flip the script and look at it through the other way as the customer. And so it's so important for all of us, any business that you're in, right? Even if you're in just a relationship with your spouse or your kids, we got to look at like, what is that other person feeling and seeing, and what's happening for them? Because we understand what's happening for us, but we take for granted that other side. And
So
so
essentially,
everything we do. Yeah.
you're essentially just producing the sales process and flow. Can you maybe talk about the transition period from going from lighting guy, Broadway guy, production guy to let's put this into sales process and work with business, and maybe
Yeah.
talk about that first client, because you know that had to be a learning process, and going the first couple events or things that you did in that world is where you learn the most from, and you start honing in your processes and building from that. So maybe
Yeah.
break down those first couple events.
Yeah, that's great. So, our I'm going to talk about my second client because my first client had nothing to do with where we are today. My second client was actually Foot Locker, right?
Okay.
So shoe store,
Well, that's a big
and
kind of second client, actually. That's
listen, it's a small world, you know that, right? Like
uh,
we all like 6 degrees of separation. So the way I got that client was I had been an assistant lighting designer for a little thing at Universal Studios. It was they do this thing called Halloween Horror Nights. So they bring in outside designers and people to help make it a cool event within the theme park. And
sure.
so there was a lighting designer. I was his assistant. I came down, did that. And then the guy that happened to be CEO of the Foot Locker Corporation at the time happened to be a previous Disney exec, and he knew that designer, and he saw what we were doing. He's like, "Hey, can you guys come and we want to create a store of the future? Will you guys
Wow.
come in and kind of figure it out with us?" So they saw this was like 96, 97, right? So they saw like online was just starting. Like people were starting to sell things online, and they were like, look, we want to make sure that people come and buy in the store. And it's great and it's fun and it's better than buying online, because they knew that they were going to have lots of, price competition from just random people trying to sell lower price stuff. And so they had that foresight, which was really wild at the time, right? And so what we started talking about was, what would a store of the future look like? How would it function? Why would it be great and whatever? And so they found this amazing space. It's right outside of Boston in Watertown, Massachusetts. It was called it still is the Arsenal Mall. And so it's like this old like Army Arsenal building. So it's kind of a cool place, like open rafters, like big high ceilings and whatever. And they wanted to build it there. And they had a store there. And we walked in and they're like, we want screens and we want lights and we want sound and all this. And we're like, okay, cool. So like, where would you see this? Like, we were just literally standing in the space and like, well, there's outlets up there. Let's put the screens there. And I'm like, I don't think we should decide where things go based on it's easy to plug it in. Like, so then I started just asking questions like, why do we want a screen in the first place? Let's say that the customer sees the screen, then what? Like, what do you want that to, what action do you want them to take after seeing the screen? Like, well, we want them to buy stuff. I'm like, okay. And so what's going to be on the screen that's going to make them want to buy stuff? And they're like, we hadn't even thought of that. Like, we just wanted screens, right? And so as we started to reverse engineer what we wanted the customer's behaviors to be, we started to think about like, what journey could they go on through the store that would have them have these feelings, have this excitement, have this desire to maybe purchase a new product or try on something else, or maybe see something that they would not normally see because they're just in a hurry to go grab a pair of shoes and leave, right? And so what we started to do was think about what would that look like? Then we started to look at some stats and data, like what customers bought more stuff in their other stores, like what made people buy more. And what we started to find was that if a customer had a positive experience working with a person, the more time they spent in the store, the more was the total cart value, right? The more that they purchased. And so we started thinking about like, how could we get them to enjoy being in the store and actually go through the store the way we would want them to? Like, if we could create the perfect sales experience, what would that look like? And so we wanted it to be where when they walked in the store, the energy shifted. Like, they got into that athletic, like, I feel good in here. Like, I want to like look at that. I want to lose weight. I want to work out. I want to, have the right shoes for the right sport, for the right function. I need the right shirts. I need the right gloves. I need the right whatever. And so what we started to do was like think about all the different kinds of people that went in there, the avatars, if you will, and what would that look like for each of them on their journey. And so when we designed the first store, it was designed to pull them in as if it was like a lazy river, right? If you've ever been on one of those where there's a current that moves you through the space.
That, right? That's hilarious that you say that, because as you've been describing this, what I've been thinking of in my head is Disneyland, and it's a small world. It's like you're literally going through this, and at the end, they got a photo for you to buy. It's like, here, we're going to describe the story. And
it is that kind of an idea, right? We're taking you on that journey, and you're along for the ride, and you're open to it, right? You're not feeling forced. You're feeling like it's smooth, and it flows, and it's good. And so we created media and content that was immersive, like truly, like the entire store would transform in a heartbeat. And it wasn't just spectacle, it was actually elevating their heart rate. And so we'd have like the first 4 pieces of media, it was like hands, feet, balls, and heartbeat. And so it was like some people would be juggling balls and do all these different things with balls. And then you see that like Foot Locker referee, their little logo guy. You'd hear like a couple tweets on the whistle, and then all the lights in the store would highlight something that would be related to basketballs or soccer balls or whatever. And so it'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool. I want to go check that out. And then it would go and there'd be heartbeat. So you'd see like crazy media. You'd be hearing the heartbeat. It'd start beating faster and faster. And people would get excited when they're in the store. They would noticeably shift their energy. And so we were able to showcase more products, explain why products were better. And ultimately, in the flagship pilot, we did this one flagship pilot, we had a 400% increase in sales. Yeah. Because we were able to do all those things. And so they're like, this has got to be a fluke. We got to do it again. And so we did another store just outside of Chicago in Oak Brook, Illinois, the headquarters of McDonald's, right? So we did one there, and we had the same result. We had like a 400% increase in sales, right? Then we did another one just outside of New York City in Stamford, Connecticut. Same thing, 400% increase.
Were these pop-up shops, or were they? Were they pop-up shops for just a temporary period, or were they
No,
permanent installs for?
no, these were
Okay.
permanent. These are like legit builds. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So then we rolled it out to like I said, I was saying like over 1,000 locations, and they had massive. And they weren't all the big flagship levels, right? The key cities got like the biggest ones. So there's an A store, a B store, a C store, a D store, an E store, right? And we did some in, we did Japan, we did Mexico, we did Canada. I mean, it was all over the world. And that was our first big foray into this. And what we talked about at that point was creating really cool, like theatricality. And we ended up, we were more of, we did all this stuff, but we were thinking of ourselves more as a systems integrator, an AV company, than we were thinking of ourselves as an experiential marketing agency in the very beginning, right? We didn't know. And the questions that we started asking started to elevate us. And then other brands would reach out to us saying, why did you, like, we love what you did. And we want screens, we want this. And we say, great. Why do you want screens? Like, we learned to ask the right questions in the beginning. And all of a sudden, people wanted to hire us for the strategy first.
Instead
and so
of
we started to sell strategy versus peddling plasma screens at the time to make a living. We were selling strategies, and then they wanted us to do all the execution because the strategy, they wanted this design, build, turnkey solution. So our team at the time was like, we had the strategists and the designers, we had the content creators and the media people, and we had the installers and the contractor kind of people. All three of those functions in our business. And that's what we did for people. And we did like all those big brands, and we were doing rollouts. Like we'd get a flagship design or what have you, and then we'd roll out hundreds or thousands of locations. And our team grew very, very rapidly. That's how we ended up like on the Inc.'s list of fastest growing companies, because we'd assign big clients and we'd blow this up and end up doing thousands of locations. I ended up with over 1,500 employees in cities all over the US and then in other countries.
That's incredible.
And this all started as me in my living room.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, so, I mean, it's interesting to me that even, and maybe it just comes from your production background and, that Mike and I have sort of similar backgrounds. I assume that makes us all better people. But it's interesting to me that as you started to work through even your, I guess your second client with Foot Locker, you started to get the notion of different ideas, the types of questions to ask, the concept of creating an avatar and moving through that. And that's kind of a popular way of doing things today. But I mean, at the time, that was probably pretty on the edge. And so I wonder if you could talk about, how, as your business evolved and the type of work you evolved and all those things started to grow, could you talk about more, I guess, maybe in terms of, how somebody might apply this in their own business, a startup founder, or maybe somebody who's, trying to improve their business. How could they begin down sort of the experiential journey of a customer, in, I guess, more of a systematic way, or the way that you might approach it now as somebody who's been doing this for years versus somebody who's just, winging it?
Yeah, totally. So that's what we teach people today, right? Like that's what we do. So we have a formula that we sell, we teach, we coach, we have different ways to sell it. And so I'm going to just kind of share with you the high level of what that is, because that's what we do, right? And so first and foremost, it is about reverse engineering, right? And so most people think, okay, what's the first thing that we want a customer to do? I want you to start at the last thing, right? And so we call this, again, my theater background, right? Like when here's the thing, like it was the script and how we brought that script to life that made that reaction night after night happen, right? So we start with that script and then we bring that script to life. So what I want you to start with, whatever your business is, it's irrelevant. What I want you to start with is you have to really say to yourself, my customer just finished something with me. They finished my course. They listened to a podcast episode. They attended an event. They came to my yoga studio. They, we went to my driving school, whatever it happens to be. And they loved it. It was like the best experience they've ever had. What would you want them to say about their entire journey, right? I want you to script that reaction. We call that writing your ideal customer script. And so I want you to think about writing it not like, hey, I took Ryan's weight loss program and I lost 20 pounds. It was awesome. That's not helpful. I want to be like, you know what? I've been on this journey to lose weight for a really long time. I've tried 10 or 20 diet programs and nothing ever worked. But I ran into this guy, Ryan, and as he was talking, he was saying things that were going on in my head that I couldn't articulate myself. It was powerful. And so I decided to take a chance on his program, and I'm so glad I did. Let me tell you what happened. And then you go through it and you're sharing the journey of what happened, and people relate to that, right? And so by the time that we get to the end, it wasn't the 20 pounds that you lost. It was like, I have my life back. Instead of like sitting on my couch Saturday night, not going out with friends because I don't have nothing to wear because nothing fits me, I have my life back. Like I walk into my closet and I have options. I'm calling friends to go out instead of being the person that's receiving the call saying, sorry, I'm not going out. This has changed my life, right? That's what we want. So I want you to think about that. And you can make it up. Even if you're starting a business out, we got to make it up. And then we're going to look at that. It leaves clues of what things have to happen along the journey. When you do this, you're doing it from the eyes, through the lens of your customer, right? Not from the business. I want you to step inside those shoes. So for many of us, like some of us have built a business of something that we went through ourselves. And now we have the curse of knowledge. We know too much. So I need you to go back in time when you were that customer, or pick one of your ideal customers, or pick a friend that you know that needs this and step into their shoes, right? So that's where I want you to start. I want you to write that script, and then we can go backwards and we can start to put things in place along the journey that will have them authentically share that script. And what ends up happening, so most of our businesses, we got to fill the funnel, right? We got to get more business. I get that. But we spend all of our focus trying to get strangers to say yes, instead of taking the people that did say yes, our customers, and obsessing and focusing on them and helping them get those results. We miss that, most businesses. And that's why I started saying, like in theater, everything's about the audience. Your customers are your audience. Your employees are your audience. Your partners and vendors are your audience. They're different audiences. But if we focus on how to help all of those people be successful, the stories that we get, they're powerful. That becomes the best marketing to fill your funnel that you can, and will bring the right fit clients in. And it's also going to give you a lot more power, because what ends up happening, like we think of like the ideal outcome as, we call it the R4. We want clients who rave about their experience. We want clients who renew their subscriptions or their memberships in your programs. We want them to, purchase, more products. So we want them to, want, what else do you have? What else do you offer? Right? So we look for that. And then ultimately, we want them to go out and not just refer customers, but recruit customers, like where they're actively going out and saying, dude, you got to go work with Jason. Like he's amazing and it's going to change your life. Like don't question it. Go do it. Right? Ryan's going to help you more than anybody else. And we all have had customers that do that they're like so passionate. And if you have an online business, like affiliate marketing becomes a big thing. When your customers become your affiliates because they had such a transformation, the authenticity that they share the stories with and that they market with, they're powerful. They're more powerful than anything else you can do. So that's why I want you to start by writing that story in a powerful way first. And it's not just the result, it's the journey.
I love that. If you think of like a concert, for example, you've got an opening band, you've got another band, you got the headliner. As a production coordinator, or lighting guy, or someone involved with the show, you're not going to use the same light setup that you're going to use for the headliner. And even when the headliner's playing, you're not going to start with the biggest, craziest scene. You're going to end with it. And so you're literally planning the night, and if you're a DJ, you're doing the same thing. You're starting with, your more chill stuff, and you're kind of building a vibe, and you're going through and you peak, and then you slow it down to close the night out. And so there's always kind of a flow to it. And I love your thought process coming from the production side of thing and putting it into retail and sales and telling the story and getting it out there. I haven't worked with, giant clients like Foot Locker to the scale of building the whole store out, but I have worked with Macy's. And one of the things that we used to do back in the day is I would come in and I would set up a sound system, some basic lights, and they would do product demos for like cooking. And they'd bring a chef in, and we'd mic up the chef, and I'd play some music beforehand, and then he would actually cook a meal in front of the people that came to watch him cook. And then he would use the actual products that they are selling. So
For
he
sure.
would walk over and open a new package with a knife in it and use it right in front of him. Oh, this is great. And then they would get to taste this meal that was made before their eyes, and they could see that, they could do this. And now, hey, why
Yes.
don't I go buy that same product? Why don't I go do
Yes.
this? And it's kind of the same kind of thing, storytelling at a smaller scale than, creating the whole production of going through the store, but
Sure.
actually seeing someone use the product and then tasting that meal is, equivalent to the same thing. You're telling a story in the process, and
100%.
you're building that story. So I
love
that.
And yeah, me too. And so I love that. That's a great example. Macy's happened to be a client that we worked with as well. And so one of the things we did for them as a similar example is we would go into the swimsuit section, right? And we would change the lighting. So we'd have brighter lighting there and we'd lower the lighting elsewhere. So it felt warmer. It looked warmer.
Natural draw
right?
into
Natural
it. Yeah.
draw in. And then it was all track lighting, right? And so we actually created a scent diffuser that looked like a track head, just like the other lights, but it would spray the scent or like blow this scent over these, like, they were like polymer beads that had the scent impregnated in them. And it would just be a little fan but it smelled like Hawaiian tropics suntan lotion. And so when you're in that area, you just felt like you were at the beach. We had some like wave sounds and whatever. And swimsuit sales went up because people felt like, oh, it's the season now, right?
Subliminal messaging.
And
I love it.
how do we do that, right? And it is about using as many of the senses as we can. In theater, we do that. That's why we like the costumes matter, the lighting, the sound, the props, all of those things. It all matters. It helps to tell the story, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're all doing, right? And if we're smart, we're the guides and our customers are the heroes in our journey, and we're helping them write their success story. And if we're part of that as their guide, they're going to pay homage. They're going to share that. They're going to tell other people. And like, people talk about two opposite ends of the spectrum, when something sucks and when it's awesome. The middle doesn't matter, right? And so like, we have an opportunity, all of us in our businesses and our personal lives, we have an opportunity to give people things to talk about, right? But it's going to be this end or this end. So you got to choose. And what I see as the biggest mistake, so I'm going to just throw out like a caveat, people try and there's this thing we call the curse of over delivery. They think like, oh, like lower expectations and over deliver. What over delivery in a chronic sense, when you're always trying to over deliver, it overwhelms, right? We can win and lose customers in a micro moment. So what we have to do, once we really understand what's going on in our customers, who those avatars are, I'll come back to that in a second, then we can find key moments where over delivery will be well received, where they'll really appreciate it and feel the gratitude, and it will help them move forward in a bigger way to get bigger results. But if everything's over delivery, there's no context for over delivery. It becomes expectation. And then it's just normal. It's no more. So all you're doing is making it more work for the company, more expense for the company, overwhelm for the person, and they're not even appreciating it.
Well, and I think this goes back to your earlier point about, intentionality, right? I mean, the reason people over deliver, right, is because they're trying to win repeat business or they're really trying to impress people. But the times that it works the best, at least, in my own experience as a consumer, are the times when it's totally unexpected and it's just somebody kind of hooking you up. They're just doing the thing to help you, know, and it's not built into the formula. It's not something their boss encouraged them to do, but it's just, a human on human, emotional connection where they see you need a little something and they're helping you out. Or,
Absolutely.
you know what, let me go back and see, there might be one back there, or let me do whatever, but it's something above and beyond the expectation. And I think that that's a really good point, because we do, especially in today's society. I mean, I think just kind of with the advent of technology and all the sorts of, things that are going on in modern marketing, it's really easy to be overwhelmed anyway. Like, there's so much noise, there's so much everything. And some manic customer service representative that's going out of control to over deliver, it just kind of adds to that noise, right? It feels unauthentic. It doesn't feel realistic. And it feels like, this is something that is part of this process. And I just know every time I come to store X that they're always going to do this weird thing. For me, it's kind of the, and maybe this isn't a great example, but it's like at Chick-fil-A when they say pleasure at the end of their thing. So it's, pleasure to serve you or whatever. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's a little much, right? I would rather have something that, because when they all say pleasure, it doesn't mean anything. Pleasure is just pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. Everybody says pleasure, and it sounds a little bit creepy.
One of the biggest
But if somebody, gives you a good, authentic, hey, thanks for coming by. It was awesome to have you today. Whatever, like that would be so out of place in a sea full of pleasures that you would be like kind of taken aback by it, I think. And so I think there's room to do stuff that's a little off script. And I think it could be maybe even more impactful.
As a consumer as well, one of the biggest turnoffs for me is when it clicks that I'm being sold to. When it's you're having a conversation and it turns into a sales pitch, or it's forced and it's not like your subtle lighting and scent kind of thing, like the subliminal kind of things, I think go a lot further for me than the guy trying to sell me a condo on a vacation. It's like the forced portion of it, or the commercial that, it really ticks me off when I'm watching something and I don't realize it's a commercial, and then I realize I sat through a commercial because I just hate commercials. You know what I mean? But
totally.
To Ryan's point, yeah.
Well, and what's interesting about that, just using the example of your infusing scent into the area, right? I think, if I was really going to play devil's advocate, I imagine there are people who might be like, oh, well, they're just trying to trick me, whatever. And those are the cynics of the world. And those are the people we can't plan for.
Sure.
But I think what it does, which is maybe the more important part, or maybe the piece to call out in this, is it brings back a memory from your youth. It connects you to a memory of being on the beach. It does a thing. And so whatever it does, I mean, you call it subliminal marketing, call it whatever you want to call it. But what it is doing is triggering something real in a person, where it's an emotional connection. And I think a lot of times, and again, maybe just in our sort of hyper, consumer world that we live in, people lose sight of their connection with the things that they buy. And sometimes it's really easy just to hit buy and you just don't even think about it. Like, I don't really think a lot about the connection I have between the thing I bought on Amazon or whatever. Like, I'm not really that invested in it. But for in-person stuff, especially, and some online experiences, I think that emotional touch, like, is the whole difference, right? I mean, it is. I feel good about the decision because of, some other thing that's totally outside of the company's control. But, they had the wherewithal to make a connection with me on an emotional level. And so I'm choosing, there's that old saying that you do business with people, like, and trust. 100%. And so, and it's kind of like that on a consumer level, right? I mean, you buy the products that or you have an affinity for a brand, or that you trust, and that they have served you well, or you believe they will. And so I think that insight, more than just sort of subliminal marketing or whatever, I think that the insight of making an emotional connection with your customers or prospective customers, might be the most valuable thing you can do. And I think that's kind of what you're saying with evoking these responses from folks. 100%.
Yeah, I have 3 things to share. So that were triggered by this last conversation, which I love so much. This has been so much fun, guys. I'm so glad that we're doing this. So first of all, there's a great quote that's like, good. I think it's either good design or great design is the absence of distraction. Yeah. Right. And I think as we look at our businesses, as we look at the things we design, market, our websites, whatever, we have to be focused, right? Like, we don't want to distract people. And I think when you over deliver all the time, whatever, we're distracting people. Right. So I think there's just a great quote. I don't know who said it. It wasn't me. I just think it's a powerful quote. The second thing I want to share is, along the lines of what you're saying, right? So this intentionality is important. I don't think any of this as subliminal. I think what you said is absolutely true. The number one thing that we focus on is how our customers are feeling, right? And so in our formula, right, we call it the kinetic customer formula. There's 4 key variables. There's attitudes, there's behaviors, there's friction, and there's momentum, right? And so attitudes are what people are thinking and expecting, right? Behaviors are what they're doing. Friction is what's stopping them. And momentum is what's moving them forward, right? And so those are the key variables. But what changes all of these things is how they're feeling, right? If something feels hard, or something feels difficult, or something feels good or feels easy, it helps get people results. And as we define what is a client's experience, a client's experience is how your customer feels after interacting with your brand. It's their perception, right? It may not be always reality. Because remember, someone's journey, we can't control what happened before they got to our website. They could have had the worst day ever. We don't know what happened. Then they got to our website, they saw our ad, something happened, or they stepped into our retail store. They're coming in with that baggage. And so as a salesperson or a customer advocate or whatever, as a team member, we have to be empathetic. We have to understand our customers, and we have to understand the journeys that they're going on. And it is about that feeling and acknowledging that and seeing that. And so often we're on script, like you were saying, like, right? When we're just saying the words, but we're not looking at the reaction. So I think what you said is so beautiful. It's like we have to give permission to people to go off script, right? Yeah. But the context of the show and the theme, so our mission, our vision, our values of our businesses inform what's safe to do off script and allow them to be the individuals that people get to know, like, and trust, but they're part of the brand story. They do it within those. So like, I think I hear people all the time, especially small business owners, mission, vision, values for big companies. It's not. It's just not. Like, you need that to guide the direction of your business. The way I help people scale businesses is by having clarity in all of these things, right? Clarity allows your team to thrive. It allows your customers to thrive. And we've been talking a lot about expectations, right? Like, if we don't set expectations for our team and for our customers, guess what? They have them anyway. And then we're not going to be guaranteed to be in alignment, right? And so it's just so important, that perception that our customers have. If we set expectations and we manage them, well, then we can definitely find the key moments to over deliver, because we're making sure that we deliver. And how many bad experiences do you hear on social media or from friends? Like, that's what most people talk about. It's not usually the amazing stuff. That seems to be less frequent, that people are having those amazing experiences. It's more frequent that something just pissed them off. And it can, one of the things we say to people all the time is, like, you can go from having a raving fan to a raving lunatic in an instant, because you could drop the ball as a company and they could have been so charged up and so happy. And then that one thing, coupled with whatever else is going on in the world, can make them be really angry and really upset. So as our businesses, we really do have to be mindful of how people feel. It's just so important.
Yeah. I'd like to maybe talk about, I want to share kind of a personal experience, because I'm going through one of these right now where I'm, we're investing in investing in that it's costing me and my wife a lot of money. But we're in the process of trying to get our oldest son recruited into college to play football. Mm-hmm. And so we did a ton of shopping. We did a ton of research. Finally, somebody gave us a recommendation of a company to engage with for this kind of work. They do this, they're, the biggest one in the country and all this stuff. And, and just to give you guys an idea, we're talking to the tune of $5,000, right? So, mm-hmm. This is not a little investment to work with this company. And what I've discovered in working with them, and I won't name them here, but the big thing that happened for me, and I think that this is something that we could maybe explore, you may have examples of and how we overcome it, is there's a big disconnect between what you think you're getting for the money and what they're delivering mm-hmm. for the money. Mm-hmm. Now, there's multiple aspects of their business, right? And so, there's a piece of the business that's, one-on-one coaching and things like that. And the people side seems to be pretty good. Although to nod back to Mike's comment earlier about feeling sold all the time, these guys feel like they're always selling you. They're always asking for a survey. Hey, we talked for 15 minutes. Can you fill out this survey? And I know why companies do this stuff, but it just feels a little, it's like, okay, I already gave you the money. Stop with this. And so, yeah. But the other aspect that's happening is, like, so for example, their software feels really janky. Their app barely works, these kinds of things. So you've invested all this money in this company. And like I said, they're the biggest one in the country. So no shortage of money coming in. And they're clearly, in my opinion anyway, the biggest in the country because they spend more on marketing than anybody, mm-hmm. than, investing in their own business or whatever, and building a true, a platform that could actually serve their customers better.
Sure.
And so what I want to try and have a discussion around is this concept of disconnect, or sort of the difference of, a customer's expectation versus what the customer receives. And mm-hmm. I'm at least objective enough to recognize I may have come into this with some expectation that they didn't set, right? Mm-hmm. Arbitrarily, X number of dollars means X level of value to me, but that doesn't necessarily have any relationship to what they believe, sure. Right? So in their defense, maybe they're doing the right thing for the dollar amount. But that's been my big takeaway from this experience. And I actually would have, to your point about you only really talk about the best or the worst, they sent me a survey yesterday asking about, would you recommend us to somebody? Mm-hmm. And I wrote back this long review about, well, the people are great. I don't want this to reflect on the person, but be aware that every other aspect of your operation is a letdown. And, mm-hmm. And so, of course I hear back from everybody today and everything, but so for companies like this, so let's say that a company like this engages with you guys, they recognize, hey, you know what, we're getting reviews like this that are, we've got some things right, other things aren't right, and we want to try and, fix this disconnect or manage the disconnect between what customers are expecting and what customers are getting. How would you approach something like that? Or how would you encourage a company like that to try and resolve that disconnect? Because I suspect that this is something that happens a lot, and probably more with like luxury goods and other things, or maybe luxury companies are better at this. But, there's this threshold of stuff is expensive. Everything costs more now than it used to, even all the way down to a cheeseburger. I'll get the same bump if I pay $14 for a hamburger and it sucks. You know what I mean? Like, so I'll get that same bump or that same sort of emotional reaction. And so how do you go to, or how would you advise a company that's having a problem like this? Maybe it's known to them, maybe it isn't, and help them sort of get over that hump or work to meet expectations.
Yeah. And this is a very great question, very great topic for discussion. So, and I have countless of my own stories from the past 2 weeks that are similar, right? So there's a great stat that I share in our program, and it's that, for every one customer that complains, 26 others remain silent.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to think about that for a second. It's the sleeper cell in your business. So you have a cancer and you don't know about it. And then finally you find something on a scan, and then you start to look and it's already everywhere, right? And you didn't know about it because people didn't care enough to actually even tell you. They were so disconnected, so upset, whatever. And so like you sharing that is actually a gift to them. Hopefully they see it that way. Most of us don't, especially smaller business owners, because it's our egos, like our egos and our identity as a small business owner, entrepreneur, oftentimes get connected to that. And it's like, it's attacking us, not the system or the process or whatever's happening.
And just as a note on that, I'll just add that, I did get the text from our guy, our trainer guy, or our recruiting coach saying, man, I'm sorry, X company isn't meeting your expectations. I'm really sorry about that. Anything I can do, let me know. But this isn't a him problem. This is a company problem. And so I do fear that he's the one seeing this negativity or this, critique. And it's not getting run up the chain.
He probably got chewed out for something when really it wasn't him that caused it. It was everyone else, but he's the guy that was focused because he's your guy.
Which I hope is not the case, right? But I can see how, the feedback placed with the wrong person could, maybe fall on deaf ears.
For sure. I even think, I use the analogy of FedEx often, right? Like, so if you think about it, right, there's a system that actually does most of the work in FedEx. And then there's the exception handling system that deals with all the stuff that falls off or gets broken. And so like our systems have to be working, right? The reason that the theater experience and the rock and roll experience, we have the same people laughing and doing the same thing night after night is because it is a system, right? And it's rehearsed and it's practiced and we get feedback from the audience and then we tweak it and we adjust it. We might call another rehearsal and fix something or reprogram or re-cue or do something different, right? And so, in our businesses, like this is an opportunity. First of all, when something bad happens, right, or unexpected or negative happens, it's an opportunity to deepen the relationship based on how you show up and how you handle it, right? So like if they took your perspective to heart and they said, look, we'd love to talk to you a little bit more about what your expectations are, where we missed that. Would you be open to a 30-minute phone call, Zoom call, whatever? So you can really explain that because we want to try and make this right for you. And so that call, you could be sharing that and they could reset your expectations, say, we're sorry, we actually have to fix some of our messaging in the beginning because that's actually not what we do at this price point. You might be like, oh, okay, I understand that. So how can I get that done? They may have a solution. They may be able to do something for you. We don't know. It also may be, you know what, like there's this whole part of, the thing that you didn't know about or, who knows, like, but having that conversation, at least it gives you an opportunity to explore that and expand that. And for them, like if one customer has this problem, I guarantee you more do. It almost always is not a one, especially with a larger company, like you're saying, there's almost no chance that it's just you.
Well, and it's interesting, like with this audience of people too, right? Because you have your selection of sort of, I don't know, probably above middle class, relatively well-to-do families that are putting money into their kids to try and get them into college. Yep. So you have sort of that group of people. And this is largely, not your super elite guys, right? They're getting grabbed anyway, right? So you're the sort of the next tier down and, you're trying to find a good opportunity for yourself, something like that. So you've got sort of this class of people who are the little bit, more well-to-do. They've got some money, expendable income to throw at something like this. But on the other end of that, and just from, different communities, my kid has played football and I have a little bit of experience in this. You also have the people who they're spending their last jelly bean to buy that thing.
Of course.
And so for them, especially around price and price sensitivities, the expectation is somebody who we're probably going to be short on rent this month so that I can make sure my kid has this opportunity.
Yeah.
Is going to be different than the person who just maybe this is some expendable money and this, they just don't want to do the legwork themselves or something. So I think that, knowing that, and I assume a company like this knows because they work, exclusively with athletes, they should have some understanding of this kind of dichotomy. There is I guess what you would hope for is that they have the insight to do this. Right. And I work with, I run a marketing agency, but I also work with a software development firm. And, and I can tell you that, sometimes you have to kick a feature down the road. So maybe I can't fix the app today because I just can't, there's business functions at play. But, what I would have loved to hear or have happen is get an email from somebody on their customer success team and say exactly like you described, hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you and see, if for nothing else, maybe I can't do anything about it right now. But let me talk to you and understand what you're doing. And then I'll give you the business case. Hey, man, we allocate so much money to marketing to be the top guys in the country that they're just, they only allocate this much to development. We can only do so much. Yep. What I suspect is happening is they really invest on their front end sales funnel and it's all about getting people in. And then maybe it's a little dramatic to call it a rug pull, but I think the idea is that you sort of land on a product that's satisfactory. And
that's exactly where I started, right? We put all of our focus on getting strangers and we don't focus on the success of our customers.
Right.
And so let me just ask you this, right? I think I already know the answer, but how niche is your community? Do you know lots of other people because of the circles that you run in with the other athletes that would love to know about a service like this, that if you were loving it, you told them they would almost guaranteed go buy it?
Yep. Especially in our community, they're our son is going into a senior year of football. Yep. He, is actually kind of late to the recruiting game if he wants to get recruited. Yep. And, but he's got a little brother coming up. He's got friends that his little brother plays football with. He's got all the guys he plays football with who are seniors that are looking to graduate, who are looking to go to college, who are, all that kind of stuff. So there's a big audience of people. And right now, let's say, just for round numbers, let's say there's 100 people in our sphere.
Yep.
If any of them came to me and said, hey, what are you doing for Ethan to help him get recruited? Mm-hmm. I don't know that I would scream to the mountaintops, you ought to call these guys.
You might actually say, don't call these guys, right?
Yeah.
Or caveat emptor, buyer beware. If you do X, Y, Z, right? So here's the thing, lifetime value, right? It doesn't if, so you spent $5,000, which is great. It's a good amount of money. It's a nice sale for them. But now just within your own family, there's other $5,000 packages to be sold. And then in your circle of influence, you just said there's probably 100 people, right? So 5,000 times 100 is a lot of money. It's $500,000 that could be attributed to making you happy. And they're not doing it. So they're foolishly putting their money on the front end of the funnel instead of solving this, where you would be filling that funnel automatically, even without asking for an affiliate fee, just to be helpful because they did a great job. And this is the problem. I don't care if you're as big as this company or even smaller businesses. This is exactly the issue we help people solve. And then some, right? Because if you want to scale your business, this part after the sale has to be functioning. Because at some point, you can keep trying to outspend the competition and pour all the dollars that you have in there, but people are not going to be happy with the bait and switch, and they're going to rise up at some point, and there's going to be so much negativity or so many people not getting results that it's not going to be viable to continue anymore.
Well, and it's interesting, too, just because of the way that college sports have changed, even just in the last couple of years and continue to change. The model used to be maybe you would have started with a company like this a little earlier than we did. We might be a little late to the game, but basically they get you recruited, you're off to college, we're done. You've paid for this membership or whatever, but really you're done by the time the kid signs a deal with the college.
Yep.
So at that point you don't use it anymore. Well, now because of the way that recruiting is done, they're doing less recruiting, at least in football. I don't know other sports very well, but at least in football, they're doing less recruiting out of the high schools than they used to do, and now they're pulling kids out of transfer portal, which is sort of this new, place where college kids can make themselves eligible to move to other schools. And so they're starting to pull kids out of there. So now their model has shifted to, we're with you all the way till college graduation.
Yep.
So, right. So as part of this purchase, that they're trying to sell you into, that's part of the agreement now, is that now you have basically access to this platform all the way through. And then you have your coaches and your recruiting helpers and stuff like that to get you through transfer portal and all this other stuff to help you look for opportunities. Right. So now that you're asking for not just, a year relationship, now we have a 5-year relationship. It's like, but the value needs to be even bigger or greater than it was before. Like they've actually scaled into needing to be even better at this stuff than they are. And so it's kind of an interesting thing that there's, a business pressure on the outside of them that's leading, going to require that they be better at their craft and that they develop new tools and things like that for this new situation, and, but they're actually still kind of living in the past, even though you use this as a sales tool.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you bringing this up because this really is like an epidemic. I mean, honestly, and so even if it's the smallest, business, like, it's a mom and pop brick and mortar, right? Like if you deliver that service, and a lot of them do because they know their customers, and people like they'll pay more for a bag of dog food at the local pet shop than going online for a lot of people, right? Because they want that level of connection, commitment, service, so on and so forth. It's important that we really do think about how do we help our customers? Like how do we help them get success? And when we add friction, right? I have this T-shirt I wear that says "Get the F out." Get the friction out. Stop making it hard for your customers to do business with you, right? Because we're doing that. These guys made it hard for you. The app's not working. This is not happening. You're having a complaint. The guy that wasn't the problem, who wasn't really able to solve it, says, "Hey, let me know if I can do something." That was not helpful, right? And so at the end of the day, like, and even if so I had this crazy situation, right? I ordered some food on an app, and it was one of these new kitchens that opens up where they have like 10 different restaurants that they serve out of one like pickup place, right?
Yeah, these ghost restaurants or whatever they're called.
Yeah, exactly. And so we were like, all right, let's try it. Cause like we always have that issue. Like this person wants this person wants that. Somebody wants pizza. Somebody wants Chinese. Somebody wants this, whatever. So we said, okay, let's try it. So we did. We spent $120 for all the people that were getting the food, and we got the food. And when I tell you, like, one of the people got a cheesesteak, it didn't look like meat. Like it was like disgusting looking, and it didn't taste good. And then somebody else got a salad, and there was like it was like it was not even as big as a side salad, and it was like $15 or whatever. And it's like just more and more and more. So I can't help myself, right? So I put a note in there, and he's like, we're going to give you a $10 credit to come back.
Why would I want to come back?
I don't want that. I wasn't writing in to get a credit, first of all. And I made that clear in my first thing. Listen, I'm not looking for give me, a little shtup here because I had a complaint. I want you to know about this. You're a new business in our area. I love the concept, but there's a problem here. And they missed that. And then at that point, it's like, look, we basically threw out the food and then we went to a diner, right? Yeah. So we didn't eat it because nobody was happy. And like the right thing to do at that point was to refund the meal and say, give us another try, not give me $10 and say, try it again. But they didn't do that. And I just said to him, dude, like, just close my account. Like, we're not trying it again. And, they've been here for probably 2 months. I know they're still new, but like, there's got to be a certain level of quality. It's food. And we're not that picky. Like, I'm not a crazy foodie. Like, it just needs to be decent. Right. And it wasn't.
Well, and like we were talking earlier too, there's such sort of economically speaking, that everything is so expensive now. And a lot of these apps, like the DoorDashes of the world, like restaurants upcharge for things. It's $1.95 in store, but it's $2.95 or $3.95 on the app. So it's like, so you're paying extra for the privilege of, hey, somebody's bringing it to my house and all that stuff, right?
And I was happy to do that, right? That wasn't an issue for me. I'm happy to pay for service, convenience, whatever. Mm-hmm. But we were still paying, it was like 5 people like for $120 for like kind of fast food, basically. Yeah. And it's expensive, right? I mean, that's a lot of money. And it just was horrible. So it's like, that's the thing. Like, I'm not going to buy from them again. I'm not going to tell anybody else about it. If it was great, I would have told everybody, hey, did you know about this new thing that opened in our area? You got to check it out. Yeah. They would have had a dozen customers that came in with zero acquisition cost for them. Yep. Zero.
Yeah. Well, I keep thinking about like, a movie, for example. Like they spend all this time and they're making this movie. They're doing all these different scenes, and then they have the final cut process. And what they do is they sit down and they have, people screen and watch the movie, and they watch the audience and they watch the reactions and they make edits and cuts based off of reactions of the people, and they'll go through, and they'll show it to 50 different audiences and try and get the best bits and pieces and hone that in. And that's kind of, like we're almost out of time, but that's kind of like the process that I think we're kind of getting at with everything that we've talked about up to this deal is you want that feedback. You want to know that your salad was too small and you could have gotten a better salad at Denny's for $5. Like if they don't take that critique, if they don't take the feedback and make edits, they're just going to go by the wayside. They're not going to be 100%. Relevant anymore. And they're going to get more negative press, more negative reviews of people not wanting to go try it because Steve said, this was my experience with them. Why would I want to go there?
Well, and it's funny. It's like a little bit counterintuitive, right? Because I don't think people are thinking about it that way. It's almost kind of backwards thinking, but like by putting in that work and doing that editing and that revision process, just in my example with this recruiting company and in Jason's example with this food order system, with just those two things. I mean, if the whole premise here around customer experience is scaling your business, if I give you 100 new customers, I'm scaling your business. Like that's the whole thing.
For free.
Like some guy you don't even know is scaling your company. And it's like, so, I mean, if that's really what you're trying to do is grow your business and scale your company, I mean, what a great way. What a deal when you can just do the right thing by somebody and they're going to grow your company for you. You don't even have to do anything else.
That's exactly it. I love that. I love Mike. I love what you were saying too. That's why in theater they do previews and they review it. And we practice, we rehearse, we have, so yeah, it's so important. And it's more important today than ever before, and so I've been saying that for 30 years. And it's more true today than it's ever been before. And so just love on your customers, focus on what's happening for them, step in their shoes, shop your own experience and see how do I make it easier for someone to get the result they want? And when you do that, it's even more fun. Your team's going to grow tighter and have more fun. You're going to attract better fit employees that want to work for you. Their customers are going to tell everybody else. They're going to keep referring you. They're going to remember the experience they had because people forget what you said. They forget what you did. They remember how you made them feel. Maya Angelou, great quote. You want to make sure that you're focusing on that.
Yeah, I love that. Well, here we are getting to the end of the show then. So maybe here in these last couple minutes, Jason, do you just want to take a minute, let people know where they can learn a little bit more about sort of the CX formula process and the coursework that you guys do? Also, maybe how people might get in touch with you if they're so inclined.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. So yeah, we have, my website, cxformula.com. Feel free to go check us out there. But I have a special gift that you can't find on my website just for your audience. So guys, this is a short PDF, take you less than 10 minutes to go through, but it's going to give you a concept, a strategy, and a tactical execution of it that will change the way you think about your business and your customers. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You got to go download it, but it's at gift.cxformula.com/eggs. And like I said, it's 10 minutes of your life that I promise will be worth it. And if you download it, actually look at it. Don't let it be one of those things. I download stuff and it just sits in my download file. Look at it. It's going to change stuff for you. And if you don't mind, let me know if you use it, how it worked for you. Love to hear about that. My email will be on that when you get it, but it's jason@cxformula.com. And our programs are available. We got a lot of great stuff that can help you scale your businesses and solve some of these problems. Guys, this has been a true pleasure being with you. You create a great experience for a guest on your podcast, so I appreciate that. The conversation was really awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we really appreciate this. And if you ever want to pitch these guys, you just let me know and we'll put a little collab together and pitch this.
Yeah, we should, man. We should help them. My son's going to need this. So my son is into football. He's going into high school right now. He's working. He had Chris Snee from the Giants was his coach in the grade school stuff. They're really a great team, and he's all in. Now we're getting him a professional coach that's working with him, and he wants to go all the way. This, I would be asking you for how do I contact them right now? Because you already said we should have done it earlier, right? So I would be on the phone with them this afternoon. I don't even know who they are right now.
Yeah, no, we'll have to circle back. So maybe we can save their business and get some credits.
Let's do it.
We can get a deal that'll hook us up. My son, though, would be wildly jealous of your boy because our son's high school coach had a really brief stint with the Giants. His name's Daniel Coates. He played for the Bengals and the Broncos and all these guys, but he did a really short stint with the Giants. And my son is like the world's biggest Giants fan. So that was a really big deal for him. But poor Daniel got cut the year they won the Super Bowl. so it was a real bummer for him. But so he would love to hear that your son was coached by a former Giant. That's a big deal.
That's awesome.
So anyway, but yes. So seriously, you want to pitch these guys? Let's collab.
Yeah.
So
let's
in the meantime, thanks so much for doing the show. We really appreciate having you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thanks so much to everybody who tunes in the show this week and every week. We'll see you guys next time.